People, so tonight's guest is none other than Dan Laustsen. He is the cinematographer on The Shape of Water, John Wick 2 and 3, Mimic, Crimson Peak, and so many more, including one of my all-time favorites, Brotherhood of the Wolf. And he is also an Academy Award nominated cinematographer. So Dan, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much for being here, for sure.
Dan, could you tell us a little bit about how you got into cinematography? Like, how did you get into the business?
That's a very weird story because I'm educating as a fashion photographer when I was, I started it when I was 18, and I was done with the fashion photography school, excuse me, when I was 21, and I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to go into a National Geographic kind of stories, but it was really difficult for me to do that because I'm living in Denmark, a small country. And I didn't knew where to go. And then my big sister, maybe you guys have big sisters, but you know how big sisters are. They're saying something to you and they no, and you have to follow them. So my big sister saw advertising in the Danish newspaper about the Danish film school was looking for cinematographers for the new line. And she asked me, what about that? And I said, I don't care about filmmaking, I want to be a documentary still photographer. So I don't care. And she said, don't be like that. Just try to do it. And, it cannot hurt you. So, I sent some of my pictures in. And a month later, I got a letter from the school and said, oh, we'd like to talk to you. And I didn't know anything about movie making. I've never been I was a normal kid that saw, normal movies in cinemas. So I went to the school and talked about everything and nothing. And a month later again, I got a letter, welcome to the Danish Film School. So no test, no nothing. And it was like, of course. And then the first half year, I was a black sheep, of course, because I have never ever seen a film camera in my world. So, if you have to pan or tilt or follow somebody, I couldn't do that because I've never done it. So the first half a year was really difficult for me, but I learned it. And so I spent 3 years on the Danish Film School with a lot of other students, and that was fantastic. I'm a really big fan of film schools because I think you're learning how to make movies together with some people that don't know it as well. And you just find your own voice and your own way to do it. And I finished my first feature film. I left the school in June and I shot my first feature film in July. So I've only been a cinematographer my whole life. I've been focus pull on one show. Okay. And I was a really bad focus puller. So, it's been really good for me. I think it's a very unnormal way to do it because a lot of people dreaming about being a cinematographer when they're very young, but I didn't do that. It was 100% by accident.
And look where you are right now.
Exactly, 40 years later, And I've been very, very happy because I think cinematographer is a fantastic job, and it's really nice to telling stories with the camera and, painting with lights and writing with cameras, and being together with a lot of cool people because filmmaking is a cooperation between a lot of people, and I really like that. 100%.
I really agree with that statement, the last one that you just made. It's a collaboration between so many people. And so much goes into filmmaking, but ultimately it's the director of photography who is kind of responsible for capturing everything that goes on, visually at least, and presenting that to the audience. So,
but you're doing that with the director, and I think that's very important to understand that, you're making a movie together with a director, together with a lot of other people. I think it's very important for everybody to understand that, You have to follow the director's vision. And of course, in the good way, you're going to work together with directors. You have the same taste and opinions about movie making, because otherwise it can be difficult.
100%, yeah. And this connection between the director and the cinematographer or the director of photography, that is really important. And you work with some amazing people throughout the years. So how has that connection worked out for you? Like, how important do you think that is?
I think it's everything, but it's like respect, you have to have respect for the directors, you have to have respect for the stars, you have to have respect for the rest of the crew. But of course, I think it's very important to follow the director's vision in the beginning because, you know, the director's asking you, he or she is asking you to help you to make a movie. And helping is, in my world, supporting. And, you know, some directors have been working, have their story in the minds or in the soul for like many, many years. And I'm just coming in like a half a year before it starts shooting. So for me, I'm listening a lot to the director's vision in the beginning and just figure out where he or she wants to go. And then we find a way to tell the stories. And some of the directors, of course, have a very strong vision about storytelling. And, you know, I like a little bit dark side of the lighting. So I like deep shadows and, you know, single source lighting. And of course, when the director said choosing me, or asking me to help them, like the same. So, you know, we don't have to have too many discussions about that. But it's, you know, it's a cooperation between the crew, you know, the production designer, but from everybody. And, you know, your gaffer, your key grip, your focus pullers. And it's just like we are a bunch of people that want to tell the director's story. And I think that's, when it works, it's fantastic. Sometimes it doesn't work, but, you know, when everything is coming together, it's really fun.
100%, yeah. So how early on do you start designing the look for a film in pre-production?
You know, it depends what directors you're working with, but as I said, you know, sometimes the director has the story in he or she's mind for like years, and those guys are just struggling with the look. So when I'm coming aboard, normally there's a lot of like concept drawings and concept like ideas about how it should look, and I'm going into that. I'm opening that book and working that way. And of course, sometimes I said, why this is not going to be black instead of blue or something, you know. But normally it's between like, I'm on a movie between 8 and 12 weeks, 14 weeks in prep. Depends a little bit. It seems to be because the movie I'm doing now is getting a little bit bigger. So the prep is going to be longer and longer, and that's fantastic. You know, I really like this long prep because then you're doing the movie together much more. If you're coming in 4 weeks, 3 weeks before, it's sometimes difficult to find your way into the movie. And, you know, it's a lot of talking, a lot of looking up, you know, books or films or whatever, you know, every movie is different. But what I'm doing right now with Guillermo and with Chad on John Wick, you know, we're looking at a lot of pictures and why we're not going this way instead of that way. And, you know, we have a history now, so it's much easier for us to find the way. And Guillermo is always making some concept drawings, and Chad have a lot of pictures. He's showing me what about that or what about that. Yeah. And it's just like, you know, it's a lot of fun and a lot of discussions about the look, and it is really, it's fantastic to be together with clever people and just learning something every day. So that's great. Yeah, and the films that you've done, like I've noticed, I mean, especially John Wick and Shape of Water, they are just beautiful to look at. They're very colorful. They have some of them deep shadows at certain times. Just looking at John Wick, it's about like you built a world from the ground up through the cinematography as well. So you didn't necessarily work on the first John Wick movie, but coming on the second one, you said previously that you had to level things up. So how did you manage to do this? No, you know, the first John Wick, you know, those guys did a really good job. It's a really good movie, and it's a very smaller movie, and the schedule was very tight, and I think the money was very tight. So those guys on the first one, it's the same director, Chad. But there was, you know, they have a lot of problems money-wise as far as I know. So when he asked me to do number 2, the reason he asked me to do number 2 was he had seen the trailer for Crimson Peak. And Chad said, I want to do a Bertolucci movie that looks like Crimson Peak. And it's like, oh, wow, fantastic. You know, I want to do an action movie that looks like Italian movie, but very colorful, very dark shadows, but still, you know, not very dark, not a dark movie, but, you know, the black has to be black. That's what I like. Well, you know, I really like these black shadows and the bright highlights. And so when we have the discussions about after Crimson Peak, you know, we starting to gain a lot of more color into number 2, find some locations where we could make more colorful. and more single source lighting, more like deep shadows. And so we spent a lot of time, you know, because most of the movies shot in New York, and we shot a little bit in Rome as well. So we spent a lot of time because we want to bump it up. You know, you have to do number 2 better than number 1. And of course that's difficult because number 1 was a really good movie.
Yes.
And it looks really good. So we spent a lot of time discussing where and how to do that. And we have a lot of discussions about, you know, we want to do that sequence should be a little bit more red, and this one should be more green, and this should be more bluish. So we try to put those notes into the screenplay and talk to Kevin, the production designer, about that. So he could, you know, it's
so you basically start off design. You know, you decide what color the final film has to look in pre-production itself, right? Because I've had certain people sometimes mention, all right, I want, you know, they've shot the movie and they're like, I want the John Wick color grade for this, or they want the color grade of the Avengers, but it doesn't really always work that way. So
no,
how do you go about planning the
it's not the way I work. It's not the way we are working. You know, if you see the dailies and you see the final movie, it looks 99%. It's very, very close to it. So, you know, you're making some power windows for windows that's too bright, but the color palette is more or less the same because the costume designers, the production designer, everybody's spending so much time to design the colors. So if we are just going to change it in post, everything is going to be like, if the production designer find a very nice yellow dress, and I'm going to put some more green in the end, it's just going to be different. So we don't do that, you know. And actually that's coming all the way back to Brotherhood of the Wolf. Because when we did that, we shot that movie on film. So we was the first movie in Europe that did a DI all the way through. And we have a lot of problems with colors because we could not control the colors. We shot on film, Cinematography, and shot it out on digital. But so we did the DI, but that was really difficult. But we spent a lot of time to find the right colors in costumes and makeup and all that kind of stuff as well.
Sure.
So you have to. So when we're starting to find the look of the movie, we're not changing that in post. It's going to be like if you see dailies and you see the final movie, it's very close to it. So a little bit more, you know, sometimes contrast. But we, you know, when you're shooting digital, you have so good monitors, you have really good equipment. So what you're seeing on the set is how the movie is going to look like. So it's much easier now comparing to how it was when we shot on film, I think.
Yeah. And you've also said that, you know, the equipment exists for the purpose of helping you to tell the story. That you know, the equipment is not always like the key thing. But how do you go about, you know, now in John Wick, it's basically shot in New York for the most part, and it's a very colorful city. I've been there, and you amplified it. Like the night scenes in John Wick are really it's vibrant. And you and I had a discussion before about that chase sequence at the start of John Wick 2, where you had these vertical lights set up along the street, and I asked you, was it something that you guys did for the film? And you were like, yeah. So stuff like that adds to the, you know, the look of the movie. So how do you go about, you know, deciding how to do that?
Just to, you know, we're finding the locations. Let's bridge or whatever. And then we said, how can we pump that up? You know, it's fantastic location, but we want to put some more into it. We don't want to go in and just shoot it like a documentary. We want to give it a third dimension. And that's like, for example, with auxiliary, you know, kina flows or whatever, put them up, put some light fixtures on the pedals, and have this very artistic input to the locations. So we try to do that as much as we can. And of course you can do that because the budget is a little bit bigger than the normal movie I'm shooting in Denmark or in Shangri-La. You know, when you have a little bit bigger budget, it's easier for you to be doing some clever stuff. But for us, it's very important. Every scene have a special visual, how to say that, vision. So every time we are coming to location, how can we do that? You know, if, for example, on number 3, we shot on Grand Central Terminal, And in the beginning, we was not allowed to light it. And we said, if we cannot light it, we're not going to shoot there. And of course, that's Chad and me, you know, if you cannot put a lot of lighting, we don't want to do that, because then you cannot, it's not going to be a John Wick movie.
True.
It's just going to be like some documentary. It's still going to be a lot of action, but it's just going to look wrong. So we are spending a lot of time to try to design that on each set, of course. And of course, that's sometimes difficult in New York because it's so busy city. It's so difficult to get permissions, and it's easier when you're doing a movie like Shape of Water, because most of that is shot on the studio and everything is designed so precise. And because Guillermo knows exactly where he wants to go.
And I think most filmmakers underestimate the power of using water when it comes to, like, you're drinking water right now. But using water to basically use as a reflective surface when it comes to aiding in cinematography. And I see you use water quite a lot in John Wick, Shape of Water especially. So could you elaborate a little bit about that?
Shape of Water, you know, that was a part of the story, of course. That was coming from Guillermo, and you know, that's a screenplay. But still, in the beginning of Shape of Water, where the steady, you know, that's a Steadicam shot coming into her apartment. Yeah, we did that, you know, the old-fashioned way, like coming from the theater, because there's no water in that sequence at all. That's like shot with smoke and, you know, some flickering lights from video projectors. And then the camera's floating and we're shooting a little bit high speed. And we create this feeling about you're below water. But in John Wick #3, again, we have discussions about what are we going to do to bring it up even further up from #2. So Chad and Kevin and me were sitting in a meeting one day and said, what can we do? How can we do New York even more fantastic? And we come up with that idea. We want to shoot everything outside night. Everything is going to be night. And we're going to rain as much as we can. And of course, everybody says, you guys are crazy. And it was a drag, but it you know, it looks pretty cool. So we have rain towers and rain spinners everywhere. And again, a lot of colorful lights. And I think it's giving the third dimension to the image. You know, you have camera movement, you have lights, and you have shadows, of course. And then you have this water. It's just giving everything a third dimension. It looks so real. It looks like you know, we are not the first movies. All the movies that use water, it's like, it is fantastic. And it's difficult to do it, but it's just looks, I love it. I think it's great. And again, with Shape of Water, you know, we have all the rain every time we're outside. There's a lot of rain. Yeah. Hang on a second. Hi, I was just sitting here. That's my son coming in here. Great. Yeah. So water is fantastic. You know, because it's the third dimension and it's so powerful because you can see it's giving something to the actors, it's giving something to the image, and it's just getting everything more real. And of course, for the story, it's great as well.
Sure. And I think we saw, there was a question, somebody had asked you about how do shot lists and storyboards contribute to, you know, the cinematography? Do you work with shot lists and storyboards?
No, with Guillermo del Toro, he's making his own small storyboards. But, you know, he's not making a storyboard, he's just making a shot list so he knows what we are going to do. But Shape of Water, for example, we are shooting that chronological. We're turning around all the time. We're not shooting like we do normally. You're shooting towards the windows in the morning and then you're turning around. Shape of Water, we are turning around all the time because the camera is moving so much. So you have to design the camera movement into the actor's movement. Right. So I'm turning the light around, or we are turning the light around every time, you know, for every shot. It's a little bit time consuming and a little bit, sometimes you lose the connection of the lighting, but you try to be on top of that. And on John Wick, we are doing some concept storyboards, you know, just so, because there's so much action now and then. So we're doing some concept storyboards together, Chad and me and everybody else. And it's just so we have a guideline for the crew and for ourselves. So this is more or less what we want to do, but we are not following the storyboard. So it's not like, oh, this has to be a medium shot. And John Wick is shot with 2 cameras, and Shape of Water shot with 1 camera.
1 camera.
And when we shot John Wick, we shot master anamorphic. And when we shot Shape of Water, we shot just master primes. So it's two different kind of way to shoot the movie. So John Wick, we're shooting with 2 cameras all the time.
I'm curious, like, okay, let's, if you have 2 cameras, yeah, I can understand, like, you get enough, like, some sort of coverage, but if you're not working with shot lists and you are working with 1 camera, don't you run the risk of not covering enough footage?
I will say if you're working with a guy like Guillermo del Toro, he knows exactly where he wants to go. And I don't think, a lot of times, I personally don't think you need the coverage. Sometimes you're just shooting. Again, it depends what directors want to do. It's like, I'm not going to be in the editing room, so it's a director's call.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, B camera can do some, depends what kind of movie you're doing. So I think 1 camera, for me, you can be more precise. But on the other hand, there's nothing wrong with John Wick, so we're doing that. So we are doing A camera, and then we're doing 3/4 B camera on a longer lens. And we're thinking about the light all the time. We're not jumping the line for the light or something. We are putting the camera where it looks really nice for the lighting as well. So it's not like we're not jumping around the lighting. So I think that's very important. When you have a director that accepting that, it's much easier to shoot with 2 cameras. But you cannot shoot with 2 cameras when the camera's moving so much as it does on Shape of Water, because that camera's moving all the time.
True.
But there's no way to get B camera, and B cameras will always do some crap, because the camera's coming, going 360 sometimes, or 280 or whatever, so you cannot come around with B camera or with the second camera. And I don't like A and B camera, because if it's, it's two cameras, it's not A and B, because if sometimes you're using A camera and sometimes you're using B camera in the movie, and it's like, nobody knows that before you're sitting in the editing room.
That's crazy. And you mentioned a lot of, in your movies, you use a lot of camera movement as well. So, and most of it is, most of it is like motivated camera movements. And what are your thoughts on, going handheld and like steady cam, basically still shots and dynamic camera movement? When do you employ which?
I just think, when you have, depends what you want to tell, but normally we are never on a tripod. We are always on a dolly, on a G-arm, or a small crane, or Steadicam. And on John Wick, we sometimes, some of the sequences shot handheld, because it's giving some more dynamic into the frame. Depends a little bit, and that's a discussion we have from scene to scene. Shape of Water, is cranes, dollies with a G-arm, hot head. Everything is hot head, more or less, or it's a Steadicam. So the Jill, we have Jill on he's an operator on Shape of Water, and we have been working together since Mimic. So we know each other, and Guillermo have used him on all his television shows, and he's a fantastic operator. So, we have this and Guillermo knows exactly, that's what I've said before, he knows exactly where he wants to cut. So he's not covering, he doesn't need that coverage because you know what he wants to do. And of course, when you're doing an action sequence on another movie and you have less time, you need to bring B camera in to make sure you got your stuff.
And what about, there's this one sequence in John Wick. It was the second one, if I'm not mistaken. You had to shoot in a room full of mirrors.
Yeah.
And
that was a set. That was a studio. But we was cheating there a little bit, because we realized very fast. We was looking into some of the old classic movies that have been shooting in mirror rooms.
Enter the Dragon.
Yeah, for example. but we was cheating, you know, we just shot it and we painted operators and the equipment out. So that was
Did you prepare for that? Did you prepare
yes,
to
yeah,
paint
sure.
them out? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we thought about, we tried to have as few reflections as possible. But sometimes, you know, when you have where Keanu Reeves is coming and you have that mirror door, he's coming up and closing again, you will see the camera there.
But that was a crazy shot. And when I saw the VFX breakdown, I was like, okay, so that's how they managed to do it.
Yeah, no, we painted out. I have to.
Gotcha.
No, we did it.
About visual effects as well. So, you know, what are your main concerns with visual effects, and like how can filmmakers make it better? How can they make visual effects, like, you know, through the cinematography?
I think the visual effects people I've been working together with for the last couple of years, you know, they've been so good, so you don't have to think about too much. Sometimes you need a green screen or blue screen, but it seems like a lot of people are starting to rotoscope much more now. So you just shoot it as nothing is, don't think about it and just shoot it, and then they're fixing it later on. It's not like in the old days where you have to spend like hours to make exactly the right exposure on the green screen, or everybody was unhappy about the green. It was not like exactly well exposed.
Yeah.
So what's happening right now is, you know, you're making your scenes together with director, and then the post-production people are just taking over and change the background or change whatever they have to change. So it's getting much more easier for us right now. But of course, the visual effects people have to understand the look of the movie, but they're not going to change the lighting. They're not going to change the contrast. They're not going to change the framing. They just have to do it better. So, of course, your exposure has to be right. You cannot underexpose, but you know, you can never underexpose. You know, your exposure has to be right.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you're coming in and you know the black is getting gray, you're just, especially if you're doing visual effects, you really have a problem.
That bike, there was this bike sequence in the third movie where John Wick's basically having to fight off like this bunch of guys with swords, and they're on motorcycles.
Oh yeah.
And that was entirely VFX.
Yeah, no. We have this at the end, the beginning. Chad wants to do a chase on the bridge. So the first week we was in New York, I went out with one of the operators and just a van to make a plate shot on that bridge. And, you know, that was okay, but we didn't like it. It looks too boring, so we put fluorescent tubes on like every second pillar for a mile. And then, so that sequence is split between, we shot on the bridge, we shot green screen, and then the visual effects helps a lot to put everything together. So that's, yeah, so that's three things, you know, it's like a lot of visual effects and a lot of stuff in the green screen in the studio, and then we shot some weird stuff in the Russian arm together with second unit on the bridge. But we spent a lot of time to get the right look for that, because, you know, again, we don't want to go out on the bridge and just shoot it as it is. We want to put a third thing in, a third dimension, and then, you know, yeah, put fluorescence up on the pillows and stuff like that.
Sure.
And that's a pretty cool sequence.
It is.
Yeah.
We have a really good question over here. Dan, how often does it happen that the DP has to do the job of a director? I was on the set on the Star Wars Last Jedi filming in Dubrovnik, Croatia, and out of 11 days, the director was there for 2 days, and the DP did the director's job for 9. Wow.
See, I've never been there. I've never done that. You know, I've always, for me, it's like the directors I'm working together with, you know, are there when I'm there. You know, I'm there when those guys are there, you know. The directors I'm working with, if they're 20 hours there, I'm 20 hours there. You know, I'm there to support them 100%. So I've never done a movie where the director is leaving and I'm finished it. I've never tried that. So, you know, yeah, I'm very lucky. Yes, I know. Yeah. So, yeah, you know, because the directors, again, they're asking me to help them, and I will do that as much as I can, of course. And
what about those instances where the director's vision and yours kind of collide? How do you achieve that sort of compromise where you think a shot should go a certain way and the director has a different idea. Do you ever come across moments like this? And if so, how do you?
But less and less. As I said in the beginning, you know, it's important to work together with people you have the same opinion about, or you know, you like the same things. If the director wants to be a lot of fill light, a lot of flat lights, I'm sure they're not going to call me. So you know, the directors I'm working together with really like this contrasty lighting, as I do as well. So it's, of course, now and then, especially when you're younger, you have to find your way around it and discuss, is that too dark or is it not too dark, or is it too blue or not too blue? But you know, again, it's a director's movie. If the director doesn't like what you're doing, he's just going to cut it out.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's very, very important to understand that you are there to support the director in the movie. It's not your movie, it's not my movie. I want to help as much as I can, and I'm I want to do it as good as I can. But I'm not going to sit in the editing room for like 9 months or 10 months or whatever. So to get into a fight with the director, I think it's so disrespect. Because again, he or she is asking you to help, and help is supporting. And of course you can have a discussion about something, but it's not like a fight. And I think it's like artist things, and you know, it is, as I said before, we are a group of people that are making this movie together, but there's only one captain on the ship, and that is a director. And it's like, and it's going down in the system, you know, you're not going to discuss what lens you're going to shoot with your first AC. You know, it's like, you know, of course, if somebody have a really great idea, it's nice to talk about it for a minute. But normally, you know, the director know where he or she is going. I know what I like or doesn't like. And we have a lot of discussions about how to do it. But it's not like, I think it should be blue and she thinks it should be green or whatever. It's you don't do that on the set. You can have that discussions in prep.
Yes.
But when you're standing there with the actors and the train is leaving the platform, you have to be...
You've already decided on that.
You have to be in the same boat or the same train, or whatever you say. And I think, again, support and respect, that's the most important thing. And it's the same taste, of course.
Definitely.
About.
Yeah. And there are those certain times where, you know, no matter how much prep you sometimes put in, things tend to go wrong on set.
Of course. You know, that's a part of the challenge.
Yeah.
It's like...
And how do you navigate those times? Let's just say, for instance, you have to, you know, you have to switch locations. Like one location doesn't really work out, and in the middle of shooting, you gotta, you know, you're given like a brand new location, and you've never been to this place before. How do you manage to light it up, and like how do you navigate that?
You know, you do that on smaller movies, I think, and I've done that a lot of times. You know, when I shot in Denmark, you know, because the Danish movies, and you just have to be open-minded. You know, for me, it's very important to have a plan. You have to have a plan in your head, because the better plan you have, it's easier to change your ideas. You know, if you're thinking about the key light should come from right instead of left or whatever reason is coming, you have to change it. If the plan is very precise, you can just change it without too many problems. But if you're coming into a place and you don't have any plans, you're just going in to chaos, I think. You know, but that's the way I work. A lot of people likes to see the location for first time and just do it, play it by ears. But you know, I'm spending a lot of time with directors, with my crew, my gaffer, my key grips, on location scouting, so we know exactly where we're going to put all the stuff. Sure. And if whatever reason something is changing, you know, one crane is broken down and you cannot take it up, and you have to think fast and do some even better. And you know, if we have a plan and the director is coming to me in the morning and says, I don't like to shoot this way, I think we should shoot that way. I don't care if it's going to be better. You know, I'm not like, no, we cannot do that because we talked about shooting this way. You know, if you're changing and it's going to be much better, it's great. You know, it's like, as long as it's getting better and better, it doesn't matter what you're doing. But if it's getting worse, of course, then it's a problem. But I'm just saying, you know, don't be afraid of changes. But, you know, for me, you know, everybody has different ways to work. But if if I'm well organized, my crew know what to do, and then we're changing plans. It doesn't matter as long as it's getting better.
Sure. So there's a question about, so how often do you come across a situation where directors shot their picture initially becomes an impossible task for the DP? I think what she's trying to ask is what the director has envisioned before. So it's quite similar to what you just spoke about, when the initial plan kind of changes and it becomes like an impossible.
It's not, sometimes it's not possible to do what, you know, but again, it's like, for me, it's like a corporation, you know, we're talking about, it's not like director, it's not like a war. We're doing the same stuff, you know, you want to do as good as you can do, because like, as I said before, if the director doesn't like what you're doing, they're just going to cut it out of the movie. And that's not good. So for me, you have to be open-minded. Be prepared, you know, prepared, support, and open-minded. And of course, sometimes if you're very insecure, it's sometimes, of course, more difficult. I understand that. When I was a younger guy, you know, you was dreaming about sunshine, and you come out to the location, it was raining. It's like, oh, I'm going to die, you know. But you cannot change that. You just have to go with the flow there. And of course, you can open-minded. It's great, I think. But again, have your plan, have your vision, but don't be a backseat driver.
You covered action sequences from back then. Basically, let's say from Brotherhood of the Wolf, and then you come all the way down to something like John Wick 3. How has the way you covered, you know, you approach action changed throughout the years?
I think when Brotherhood of the Wolf was another situation, because that was like, I haven't seen that movie for many years, but I remember, you know, there was a lot of speed ramping, you know, going from 24 frames to 96. So we shot a lot of the action sequence in the beginning with a big fight in the rain. We shot that with 3 cameras, one 24 frames, 148 and 196.
Oh, wow.
Side by side. So he could go for like 24 speed ramping to whatever he wants to do, Christopher Gant. And a lot, because they want to speed ramp, so, you know, the camera was moving not too much there because it was so difficult to control it. And now we're shooting, you know, a lot of stuff, and we're shooting 48, and you can just speed ramp as you want on digital. It was more difficult when you have to step print and all that kind of stuff in the old days. And that was one of the reasons we was trying to finish Brotherhood of the Wolf on a DI. So they could speed ramp, you know, they could do all that stuff in post. And I think John Wick, the reason it's so easy to do, or not so easy, but it's easier to do the big wide shot, is because Keanu Reeves is so amazing actor, and he's so fantastic to do his own stunt. So you don't have to cut into a close-up of a hand just to cut away for something, and just, you know, and that was a reason, that was what Chad told me first time. I want to shoot it as wide as I can, because that is the action. And I think that works fantastic. And I think that's one of the reasons John Wick works visual so great, is Chad is playing everything as wide as he can.
Sure, definitely.
And of course we have B cameras to do some stuff, but, you know, and a little bit handheld, but a lot of, you see, a lot of the stuff is, you know.
Like you actually see the action that's taking place. You actually see the fight. I
think we shot John Wick 3, 60% or maybe 75% of the whole movie was shot on the Master Anamorphic 28. You know, we shot it really wide angle. And we was like, let's go wider, but we didn't have, that was the widest we got, 28 millimeter. You know, that's pretty wide on Anamorphic. Yeah. So we use that a lot. And of course, that's difficult to be so wide angle, because then all the light have to get out of the frame. And but I think that's one of the reasons it works so great, is he's a fantastic actor and a fantastic stunt person. And you can just...
also someone else that you worked on with Brotherhood of the Wolf and in John Wick 3, so that's Mark Gaskers.
Oh yeah, but he's fantastic too, you know. And I saw another movie with him called Nomad in Kazakhstan from many years ago.
Okay.
But Mark is an amazing guy.
He's an amazing guy. I met him last year in San Diego, and
oh yeah, no, he's fantastic. And Keanu Reeves is just the best. He's just fantastic. He's so great to do that. That's pretty cool.
Yet to meet him, but let's see someday. All right, guys. So we are coming to the last quarter of our session. So if you have any questions for Dan regarding cinematography, please do drop them in the comments below. And we actually have one question. So what general advice would you give an aspiring cinematographer?
I think you have to try to find your own legs, stand on your own legs, and try to find out what you like to do and which kind of, how, follow your heart, follow your instinct, and, you know, try as much as you can, because right now it's so easy to shoot some small sequences on your iPhone or whatever you're using, and just figure out what kind of style of lighting and camera movement you like, and just follow your heart as much as you can, because I think that's so important when you're coming out there. There's so many people asking you about so much stuff, so you sometimes have to have your mind clear for that. And it's nice if you're just exercising back home or play around with the images. So just rehearse, and everybody's doing mistakes, but you know, if you're just rehearsing with yourself and some friends, it's great to play around with the images.
Definitely. And would you ever consider taking on a mentee?
What is that?
Would you ever consider taking on a mentee? Would you ever play mentor to somebody?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, you know. Yeah, of course I like to learn people. You know, now and then I'm teaching schools and something like that. But yeah.
And my personal DP is on the chat here as well, Qasim Heyman. So he's asking, when looking into complex setups, even though I have watched a lot of BTS and stuff, it's not easy to picture the mirror room scene in John Wick 2. So my question is, when creating something like that, the question's cut off, but I think what he's trying to ask is, how do you basically prepare for something like that in advance? Something as complex as the mirror room sequence.
Again, you know, we have to be so prepared. You know, we have to find a way, because we don't want to top light everything. You know, it's easy to just top light, go everything, you know, top light, but I don't like that. So we try to have design some light fixtures we could keep in the shot, but that was giving us the key light. So a lot of that light in that movie, on that sequence, is done with practicals, and we just have like kino flows hide behind the practical. I don't think we was painting any lights out in that sequence. We painted operators out, but no lights. And and again, you know, that sequence that part of the fight has to be a little bit more to the red side, and this has to be blue. So people is not getting too confused about where he was. You have to have a kind of a guideline color-wise. So that was what we spent a lot of time to, of course, to figure out what part of.
I have a question regarding, you know, similar shots. Like, do you ever use motion control so that you can like repeat the same motion again with?
I haven't done. I know a lot of people are doing that, but I haven't done motion control for many years. I think some people are, you know, you're doing your crane shot and you're just rotoscope the background and change the background or whatever. But I haven't done anything motion control for many years. It was very popular for a while. I think a lot of people are still using it, but I haven't been a part of that for some years.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And we have another question from Instagram from someone who couldn't attend this session. So he's asking, what are your upcoming projects and which directors do you dream of working with?
I'm working on a movie right now with Guillermo del Toro called Nightmare Alley, but you know, we are shut down for the corona. I'm working with people right now I really like, and I think, you know, I don't have anybody I really like dreaming about. You know, there's a lot of good directors, and of course, it's not like I want to do a movie with him. I'm very pleased about where I'm right now. So I cannot say I want to do that with him. You know, it's just, I think the movie I'm doing right now, I'm so lucky I'm working together with great directors.
I'm curious, what's the longest single take shot that you've ever done? And how do you prepare for that?
I think we have done, 5 or 6 minutes. And it's like a lot of rehearsals. And right now we're starting to, if the camera's moving around a lot, we have this handheld key light. So, we can carrying the key light around, so it's not going to be flat. And of course, if you have the problem with long takes is it really have to work, otherwise they're going to cut it out in the middle or whatever. And that's always, of course, a challenge. And I don't think it's the length of the movie or the takes that's fantastic. It's like how you want to tell the story. For me, it's not like, oh, it's fantastic if people can make a take that's like 10 minutes or whatever. It's great, it's fun to do it. But it's just, I think that telling the story is more important. And of course, if you're doing a long take, you're rehearsing that a lot, then you're shooting it. And of course, that's time consuming. And fun, no doubt about that.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, there are two questions. One is about using references for shooting, and the other one is about new lighting technology. So I'm going to combine these two questions and ask you, what sort of references do you use, if at all, for before you light a scene? Like, do you use references from movies, magazines, photographs? Like, how does that come about?
It's coming more like from pictures, and I take a picture when I'm walking around in the streets in New York and take a picture of a street. Whoa, this looks great. And sometimes you have a reference from an old black and I've never done a black and white movie, but I'm very inspired about black and white.
I mean, you're very happy about, you're very keen to shoot Shape of Water in black and white initially.
Yeah, but I'm so happy we didn't do it because it was be another movie, and I think the color palette in Shape of Water is amazing. That's a big part of the movie. So first time Guillermo talked about doing it, it was like black and white, but that was for live for 10 minutes. And I'm so happy we didn't do that because it was going to be another movie. But I like this where the light has a direction. It's my inspiration. It's coming very much with discussions with the director about what about doing that and what about. We are not saying in the beginning we have a lot of pictures on the walls just to a guideline, but when I'm coming into more precise about how to light it, it's more like we're discussing it and then we start to do. Normally we have a lot of pre-lighting times. We can pre-light a set, take a picture, come back to the set the next day and just work a little bit more on that. So that's of course a big luxurious thing.
Got you.
Right. But we're spending a lot of time on pre-lighting. So that's of course, you cannot do that on a smaller movie because you don't have the money. But if you can prepare yourself with some pre-light, that's a really big help. So you're not coming in like starting from scratch. You just have tables and lights and all that is up there. That's very nice.
I have a question with regards to basically independent filmmaking and like for upcoming cinematographers. Like most of them are like very concerned about the technical aspect. What sort of advice would you give them in terms of how to better handle the technical aspect and also the storytelling side of things? How can they start merging these together?
Of course, you need to know something about technique, but I don't know anything about the cameras anymore because the camera's getting so complicated. So, I'm so lucky I have people to help me with that. But I think the storytelling and telling with light and camera movement, that's much more important. And I think people should spend more time to think about that instead of like, I want to use that on that camera. Of course, it's important to have a good camera and some good lenses. But I just think spending more time to watch movies you like, and how it's lit and how you're going to. I think the storytelling and the lighting and the camera movements, that's very, very important. And of course, that's very difficult to learn. So sometimes it's easier just to learn how the camera works, but I think a lot of people, it's cool to have a cool camera. It's good to know everything about it, but I just think it's much more important to know how to tell the story with angles and lighting and camera movement. I think that's the most important thing as a cinematographer.
It's not the camera, but the person
of course,
behind
camera
it.
is important, but you know, still, it's more about how to tell the story.
And we have the age-old question: your feelings regarding stock versus digital.
I would say I was so much against digital in the beginning. You know, I didn't like it. I was so much like, you know, this, I hate it. You know, I don't want to do that. And I have to say, then we did some tests when we have to do Crimson Peak with Guillermo. And I understand if people are able to shoot large format on film, you know, IMAX is fantastic. It is fantastic. But I've never been able to do that. And I think the digital world is so good right now. You can see, you know, Shape of Water, Blade Runner, all those movies. It's not about the cameras, it's about the lighting for me, you know. As long as you can control the lighting and you can paint with the light and you can move the camera as you want to do. I'm very, very pleased with what we are doing right now. We are shooting Alexa, Master Primes and Master Anamorphic or whatever we are using. Right now we are shooting Guillermo's next movie, we are shooting with the Alexa 65, and that's an amazing camera. So I cannot say anything bad about digital. You know, I changed it, but I was very much against it in the beginning. I shot one movie in Denmark, digital, and I hated that thing. For me, it didn't work at all. And then it's like, and then I shot another one on film in Vancouver. That was my last movie in Vancouver, and everybody hates the look because they didn't like the grain. So we have some noise reduction, everything, because people want to have this like crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the way it works right now with digital, you know, what you see on the monitors, that's what you get. It's fantastic. Of course, some of the magic is gone away, but I'm very pleased about digital. I cannot say anything bad about it because the last couple of movies, like 5 movies I've done on digital, I'm very pleased about the look. John Wick and Shape of Water and Crimson Peak. You know, all those is shot on the same Alexa, Master Primes or Master Anamorphic.
You mentioned Master Primes and anamorphic lenses like quite a lot. Has that become like your set standard right now?
No, that's because I like those lenses. You know, I'm not this guy that wants to have if I want to have a flare, I want to make it myself. I don't want to have it like accident. It's again, as I talked about before. Oh, right. By the way, we got a flare. If we want to have a flare, we want to make it. So that's again preparation. And Master Anamorphic and Master Primes are not making any kind of flare. They're just like super sharp lenses, and they're not making any surprises for you. If you want to do something weird, you have to make it. And I like
you got lens flares by attaching fishing lines.
Yeah, we got fishing lines inside the camera on John Wick because those lenses are not making any flare. They're so sharp and so precise. But we like to have the anamorphic flares. So we put fishing lines inside the camera, and it works pretty well.
Wow. Anything else? Anything else? Any other tips and tricks that you've used that have somehow elevated the look of a film in a similar way?
Shape of Water, we shot with a diffusion filter inside because the Master Primes are so sharp, and I really like the black, and I like the contrast, and I like they're not doing anything funny. But we think it was a touch too sharp, so we put a quarter black promise inside the camera just to break the highlights up a little bit. And, you know, nicer skin tones for the actors, especially the female actors. But it's not changing the performance of the lens. This is just softening the highlights a little bit, and that was what we like to do. So we have put that filter inside the camera as well, or actually behind the lenses.
We have 3 minutes more, and I'm gonna wrap this up with one final question. There's this one particular scene in Shape of Water where you change the color tone inspired by the story. Basically, Sally Hawkins' room, it's basically iron green, teal colors, and it slowly changes into golden hues when the fish guy comes in.
That's because she's falling in love, and we have a discussion about that. You know, we was going for let's chill, yeah, and then they're coming into the bathroom and they're falling in love, and we just change the color to more like sunset. And we have that discussion in prep. You know, we want to do that much more romantic, and it's a huge cheat, but nobody seems to have any bad feelings about that, and it works for me. It works fantastic. And that's just one.
Yeah. It definitely works brilliantly.
Like, I think that's a good example of, you know, how you can change the lighting, changing into the story, and nobody's going to like, what is the sunset now? And then you're cutting out again. But it's like, we want to do it much more, that sequence much more romantic. Yeah. And that was the reason.
And at the same time, I think you managed to, you know, subliminally change the mood and affect the audience. So your job, I think I would sum it up by saying, you try to make the audience feel something visually.
Yes.
Their emotions.
Yeah.
So
but again, big discussion between, it's not something I'm doing on my own. You know, you have to do that with the director because it has to be a part of the story. And, you know, there has to be like a storytelling point. And that's, again, that's the beauty of movie making. You're doing that together with other people. That's what I like.
Dan, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, welcome. I hope you.
We look forward to seeing you hopefully working on John Wick 4, and also looking forward to Nightmare Alley. And till such time, I think we might have to go around too, because I see a lot of questions coming up, and I have questions myself too. So sometime in the future, fingers crossed.
Fantastic. Stay over there, guys.
Will do. Guys, so till next time, that's Dan Laustsen, everybody. And our next guest is going to be somebody who has, well, taken a walk in a specific park, and I will be announcing him very soon. But till such time, stay safe, everyone, and I will see you next time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.